Welcome all to the show. I'm your host, Sully. I have returning guests and two new guests. Woohoo! I got Natalia McCarty.
Hello, everyone.
I got Mikey Wood.
Hi.
I got 30-something podcast, John Reed. And
Hello, everybody.
We're going to be talking all kinds of Chicago, Wisconsin, Pittsburgh, and many other stories as we follow the middle class lifestyle and off-color high school and college material found in John Hughes PG-13 and R-rated comedies. Starting off as a columnist as well as a National Lampoon contributor, he also contributed comedy bits to the stand-up Rodney Dangerfield and Joan Rivers. He is another Chicago native who we'll be covering on the show.
Awesome.
So we'll just circle around. No particular order. John knows the deal. Just how we got into this guy. Like what order did we see his diverse filmography? Where is their place in, cinema? Are they a serious filmmaker? Are they an enjoyable filmmaker? Are they an overrated filmmaker? We always try to, pick the right bar. Now, obviously, we're all on here. It's a big packed house, so I'm sure we generally like the filmmaker a lot. But what, where do they rank? Would they make your top 20? What is their influence found in just about every other comedy? And obviously it is, but we're going to try and actually progress through that a lot and just sum up, just why did they have this kind of appeal in between movies? Why did their movies catch on, if not at first? And John, being from Chicago, and given how John Hughes himself actually pretty much would always make that a predicament. Is like, we got to film here because this is who I am. This is where I am. This is where we're filming. Was it kind of fun seeing a lot of the locations in his movies that you were privy to?
Yeah, and I started, I would have seen his movies early on as a kid. I mean, my dad loved watching movies, and I vividly remember, I don't know what it was about 16 Candles, but my dad thought that movie was hilarious. So I remember we would watch that a lot, even as a little kid. I mean, there was a lot I didn't understand. But obviously as a kid, I thought, Long Duck Dong is a hilarious character and, just all of these kind of almost, as a kid, they seemed almost cartoonish kind of characters in this movie. So that probably would have been my earliest exposure other than vacation movies and things like that. Cause I know we watch those pretty regularly, but,
nice.
And it wasn't really until, I had seen quite a bit of his movies, and then we moved to Chicago when I was a freshman in high school. And so at that point, then I started to learn a little bit more about, oh, hey, this is where John Hughes was from. Like, this is where he went to high school. He lived in Northbrook. He, has a house at that time. He was, still alive, and he had a house in Lake Forest, Illinois, which is where I live now. And, there's always stuff about, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You go into Chicago and every touristy shop is selling a Save Ferris t-shirt or, and then of course, being a movie fan and living here in Chicago, the first time I take my kids to the Art Institute, I have to have them recreate the photo of them all standing in front of the paintings and, all that stuff. So it's kind of fun. I mean, this director in particular, knowing that I could pretty much just walk out my door and there's so many different locations that are nearby that, relate to his movies that I can have some kind of a connection to. We've got there's a theater that they built. Actually, John and Nancy Hughes donated, I don't remember how much money. It was a ridiculous amount of money. Our local kind of community center, they donated the money to build a theater in there, and it's called the John and Nancy Hughes Theater. And they've donated so much stuff over the years that they were here to the community that we live in. We're right on the lake, right on Lake Michigan. And there was, I think back in 2018, there was a path that went down to the lake where you could drive down. And it was one of the very few paths in this town where you could get down to the lake access. And after a really bad storm, it got completely washed out. So it was completely impassable. Nobody could drive their cars down there anymore. And Nancy Hughes, this was just a few years ago, so John was already gone. Nancy Hughes donated the bulk of the money to get that fixed and get it repaired.
Oh, wow.
So they named it the Hughes Highway. So it's unofficially called the Hughes Highway to get down to the lake now. So it's fun stuff like that, like being in Chicago and knowing how adamant he was that he wanted to film here, that there was something, not to badmouth, Los Angeles or to badmouth New York or anything like that. But I know that was always his feeling was, I want the Midwest to be my palette that I paint from. Like I want all the movies, all the movies are in New York, all the movies are in Los Angeles. I want the movies to be in the Midwest. Like I feel like they get overlooked. And so I want to tell my stories here. And that's just, I'm not from the Midwest originally. I'm actually from Dallas. I was born in Dallas.
Oh, nice.
But, living around here and getting to see all these locations and seeing where he filmed stuff, and having watched Home Alone as a kid and then being able to drive by the house and be like, that's really cool. Yeah. Like, that's pretty cool. I mean, it's one thing to be able to drive, through downtown Chicago and say, oh, I remember that building from that movie. But to be able to go down just a little residential street, look at a building and go, that's the Home Alone house. Or that's Jake Ryan's house from 16 Candles, or and then having stories, having
or it looks like this. What if we did something like that?
Right. And then like having stories from friends who are like, oh yeah, no, when I was growing up, I knew the people that lived in Jake Ryan's house, and actually I dated their son, and having friends have all these little stories of, these different locations, and friends in high school. Actually, at my high school, they filmed one of the last movies he was even credited on as an executive producer. I've watched part of it. It's a terrible, terrible movie called Newport South.
Newport South.
Yeah, it was no bueno. But
does that sound familiar?
Yeah, but I had a whole bunch of my friends actually got to be extras in that, because they filmed it in our school, and they would just randomly like pull kids out of class, and they're like, okay, well, they're filming down this hallway, so we need 5 people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, you 5 come here.
Oh, that's right. I've seen the
You're going to be in a movie.
Damn thing.
Wow. So yeah, it's just, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to be, to have seen the bulk of his movies. He's probably a director when you ask, like, is he in your top 20? Is he, how does he rank there?
Well, and the fact that he just understood all kinds of things, just kind of fathers are sorry lot kids growing up, not knowing what they want to do with their life. And so many other people all just see shit on him nowadays, say he's overrated. And I'm just like, well, you didn't have to be there, but he's pretty eye-opening with his material.
And the way he treats the kids in his movies, like he treats them. I was a teacher, I was a classroom teacher for many years.
Good on you. Thank you for serving that teaching community, especially when it's a dying breed. It's a dying job now.
Yeah. But I mean, just like the whole. Oftentimes you get the response like you say, "Oh yeah, I'm a teacher." "Oh, I'm sorry." Like you have to deal with those kids. You have to do. And yes, there are days like that where it's like you have to deal with these kids.
We shouldn't be villainizing.
They're acting dominant, but yeah, I mean, it's kids.
Teachers are funny characters in these movies, even when they're the opposing force. They you see their perspective, and he often has a redemption arc for everybody, and it's not just like Kevin Smith where it kind of just comes and goes, and it's based off the gags. It's based more kind of on the build up to the gag.
Yeah, he wrote teenage movies the way Catcher in the Rye captured teenagers from the 50s. Like he was an adult male writing movies that captured what teenagers actually were like. I mean, he did a lot of he let them improvise and things to that effect too. A lot of times, but that's the first thing that I noticed. Was these kids felt, other than like Weird Science, which is like a farce and stuff, but they felt real. These kids felt like people you even hung out with, or even so very cool.
Oh, totally. Really even obvious. Ones where he's just a scripter, is like his influence is felt on it. And I mean, even if he didn't have really much to do with it, is like, well, it's a huge production, even if it's not him in the chair. But, sorry, go ahead.
It was always really amazing to me how he, as we were in high school ourselves, you really felt like you only related to people in your clique or in your group. And he was able to express every single type of kid that existed in high school through his movies. Like he was able to make every single person relatable. Like, I feel like I think that's why when people say he was overrated, I was like, I don't think so. Because he influenced so many other movies with his movies, because those students that he would write about were relatable to everyone.
even ones if you've just seen him once, it kind
Yeah.
of leaves some interesting impression. The characters are just bigger than even the actors could portray. I mean, and it's a fun habit to kind of get into. I mean, there would be times where I would have go-to movies. Every other visit from my cousins, I would probably have The Great
Mhm.
Outdoors or Ferris Bueller playing, and just. But then TV is often playing one of his other ones like Dutch or even Dennis the Menace, or
Mhm.
obviously one of the big highlights like Some Kind of Wonderful and Pretty in
That's
Pink,
my
which
that's my favorite. Yeah.
yeah, those kind of get overshadowed a lot by how good Breakfast Club is, how big of a cult movie Weird Science is, or how in demand the vacation films are.
Mhm.
So
Well,
Yeah.
and I love that you said it that way, that it was, that he captured these different groups so well. But the thing that I think he also did really well with that is, as individual groups, yes, he kind of got the different cliques and how they operate, and
they don't all sound like one voice. They don't even
no,
sound like they belong together. Yeah.
they're all three-dimensional. They're separate, but they're all equally represented. But the one thing I really love is he did it, because I know sometimes certain critics always would refer to him as like a big child. Is like, well, he only writes kids well, so he's like a big kid. Yes, but he's also doing it with the wisdom of an adult. So you've got the stories where, like, that's why I love Breakfast Club, is you've got
Yeah.
the stories of like each of these kids, they've got their own thing going on, but he writes it in such a way, and as a teacher of kids who, I taught middle school, and so of kids who are in like that 13-14-year-old kind of age range, you're trying to always get across to them that yes, you've got your individual group, your individual clique, but you guys are really not all that different. Like, you all think, that the jocks think that they're better than the nerds who think
You
that they're
all
better
want to
than
get out of this prison
like,
that
you all
is
right,
high
like, you
school.
all have things in common, and you just are not seeing that. So don't bully
Yeah.
each other, don't pick on each other.
No
And I
gatekeeping,
think
man.
that's what he did so well with those characters is, yes, he had all the individual groups and represented them well, but then he also in each of his stories had the characters like cross over and realize something about the other groups, and
Yeah.
realize, hey, maybe we're not all that different. Maybe he looks, superficially, this guy looks like a loser, but if I actually talk to him and get to know him,
Mhm.
which I think is the benefit of having, an adult who can write in an adolescent voice. I think
Mhm.
it's one of the
He
things.
also made you care about characters that you weren't really like, you didn't expect that you'd give a shit about, like the janitor in Breakfast Club. Like, the amount of people I know who always had these theories on him, and I'm like, that's how impactful that character was. And I think the other thing
Exactly.
about John is that I mean, I'm sure that he there was a casting director and everything, but
Mhm.
he really saw actors that were capable of improvising and not acting like they're acting. Like,
Yeah,
I was
never a moment
young. That was the
where
first time I saw actors that actually you didn't think they were acting. It was just, there was some improv going on. And I really
and
appreciated
it's
that. Like,
natural. It's just
yes.
as good
Yeah.
as say the crews on Caddyshack or the first Beverly Hills Cop, where it's organized improv. Because nowadays you'll see other stuff, and it's like, unless it's an improv comedy troupe, it's pretty unorganized.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
he had it, like you say, is like, doesn't have to match the template, but it's got to begin and end this way. Take it away.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like any
It's
good
fu-
sketch, you want something, and at the end of this, you're either gonna give something to someone or deny, and it's gonna
Mhm.
be, but it's gonna be funny either way. It's gonna be
Yeah.
an
I think
evolution of that.
that's also why so many cast members had such a bond with him, because I think he asked
They're
them
the
to
Brat
put
Packers.
themselves in
Yeah.
them. Like, he told them, put what you would, he wanted them to like be a part of this, of
Yeah.
creating these characters, which was, I mean, Anthony Michael Hall I so appreciated him in anything that he was doing at the time. It's just, his improv skills were amazing. I was not
I can't
shocked.
imagine any of these guys without this in their career. It's so
Mhm.
impactful on them.
I
It's
mean-
literally
If you look at somebody like Anthony Michael Hall, movies that he did with somebody other than John Hughes, the performances weren't as great. They weren't. I mean, he's
Yeah.
he's not a horrible actor by any means or anything, but there's just some kind of vibe that Hughes movie or Hughes related movies. Like, he didn't direct Career Opportunities and he didn't direct Some Kind of Wonderful and things like that, but his presence is there,
Yeah.
and it feels enough akin to it that I always forget that he didn't actually direct those things. Like growing up,
totally.
Like
and even when Disney took advantage of like his unsold scripts, and Sony, I know, did a lot of them, and you're like, well, it started out as his idea, and regardless of whether you like it or not, he was such a quiet and reserved man. So I mean, if he had a problem, you weren't going to know about it beforehand. And it's very unusual because most of the time, everyone's, if they're in the public eye, they're in the public eye forever, and he was just very low key. He pretty much just came to set, said anything he want, and you get a sense that he was pretty much satisfied with everything he did. It's like, you want to produce my script? Go for it. You want me to be in charge of my vision? Thanks. Let me at it.
He was, I think, I'm 49, so the first that I can remember, my uncle was like 5 years older than me, so he dragged me to see like 16 Candles when it came
sweet.
out. And then he dragged me to see Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and then he dragged me, and I noticed the name of John Hughes film before every single. So he was, and I was like 11, 12, 13. Like I wasn't in high school, but I wasn't I noticed these things. So he was probably the first filmmaker other than Steven Spielberg that I noticed an actual like style to. Yeah. Like I realized that these people, like who directs a movie actually matters, who, because I didn't really pay that much attention to it until that. And I just realized that every single time I saw one of these movies, I thought it was really funny. And
he
really
loved all kinds of comedy. He loved slapstick as much as simple, childish cursing, as well as just something for every character to do. They're not just a plot device. Like all the teachers might even be your favorites just because they have outrageous remarks, and then the other adults who are trying to catch their kids misbehaving while they're away.
There's just a heart. There's like this heart to everything that he does. That's even like
Jingle All the Way is not a John Hughes movie. There's that kind of influence. Any other misbehaving movie, I would after a while. I'm like,
well, like what's the first?
No John Hughes credit.
What's the last one? I think Curly Sue was the last thing he actually directed. Yeah. And there was a gap between Curly Sue and whatever came before that. But see, that's another one that's just got like such heart, and they're small. I mean, other than like Home Alone was gigantic.
That one, and now Weird Science and 16 Candles. It seems like no one can get past that. There might have been something politically incorrect that
but
took
at the
place,
time,
and it's like, what do you expect? This is an 80s movie.
It's
not gonna be.
They're products at the time, but none of it is mean spirited. Like I don't think any of it is actually.
It's not alienating either. It's not exploiting anyone. And I did hear some of the actors kind of thought he was bossy, but that's kind of what you're supposed to do as a director. Just not saying he might.
We're in a moment right now where people are not allowing the thought of evolution to be a part of things. Like, yes, if we do what we were doing then, it'd be problematic, but it wasn't problematic then because we didn't learn. We're evolving.
We took 3 decades to learn.
A lot of things that John Hughes did probably wasn't cool,
and that just adds to the charm of these backwards people. It's not like South Park where
that's exactly
you have to ask someone, do you find it funny because he's cursing, or do you find it funny because you actually get the joke? It's that.
Because wasn't, I think, Molly Ringwald a few years ago in kind of as the Me Too was kind of at its height.
Retrospect.
She put out kind of like a retrospective or an essay, and she talked about how, I felt like some of my characters were, problematic in the ways that they were portrayed. But she even said, you got to separate out what we were doing at the time and John Hughes, what he was trying to do. Just like you said, like he wasn't doing it maliciously. It's just, again, we hadn't evolved to the point where we are now,
and if he hadn't done it, then someone else would have. There would have been some other college comedy.
And you're not hearing stories about him like you're hearing about Joss Whedon. You're not hearing, like, nobody's coming forward and saying, hey, this happened, and hey, I was abused.
And Whedon framed his whole career as like, I'm the next James Cameron. It was like,
he could tell he didn't give a shit. He just wanted to do his stories and put it out there.
He wanted to base his movies off of a certain filmmaker and then just give a reason to kind of boss certain people of the opposite gender around. It's like, that's not how James was. James was bossy. He could be a prick sometimes, but he believed in his vision, and it was a matter of, I will stay here all night with 2 hours of sleep if I have to, just to get this fucking movie done, And it's hard to explain that to people too. It's just like, you can tell the difference between someone doing their job versus someone who's phoning it in. This is my persona, so to speak, and you're not buying it, but I'm sticking with it.
Yeah.
Someone mentioned Some Kind of Wonderful, and like on its surface, it's just Pretty in Pink with the gender swaps. That's really kind of all it
is. I just kind of like some of the dialogue.
Right, but it's written so that you don't mind it. Like it's such a
Mary Stuart Masterson and Eric Stoltz are just so good.
Yeah, and it's just a charming thing. Again,
Watts was like I related to Watts so well. It that was why that movie was so important to me, because it actually terrified me how much I related to Watts. Because
all these tomboys, all these.
It came out in 87 and I was like 12. But then later on, when I rewatched it when I was older, I was like, oh crap. I was like, that's me and John, like Friend John and other girls. I was like, that's it. I was like, I don't, and it actually became difficult to watch it sometimes. I was like, this is too real.
It's too real. And I think that's the other thing is like some of his movies will have cringe moments, but it's the deliberate cringe as opposed to, that actor's missing their beat. And some of his bloopers, it would be funny when you realize after the fact, oh, that's a blooper. Well, it worked for the comedy,
Yeah. There's been this whole movement. Well, we're kind of like in the midst of this. There's a great cynicism.
There's a lot to circle around.
Like fans of things. We were talking about this before you started recording. Fans of things have gotten very toxic, and maybe they always were, but I didn't know that. But there's like this toxicity and cynicism.
Use the internet till you just want to shut down the internet.
Like people talking about how Ferris Bueller, the character, is like a horrible
selfish
person and everything. Yeah, and it's like, come on, man.
It's like, yes, you knew that going in. So what's the problem?
But not even really though. Like by the end of it, he realizes, the whole, it's I think
if they were perfect, there wouldn't be much of a movie. That's also the thing. They're trying to make it real, but not in a way just for a cheap gimmick. They're also trying to make these characters at the end of this. Okay, I still hate my dad, but this is the last time I misbehave and play hooky, for a while.
Like
I'm gonna do it again, but not for a while.
I don't envy people who are trying to get comedy films made these days, because it's like there's a lot of things that are not funny anymore, because we're starting to, as a people, we are taking other people's feelings into it, and that doesn't make us weak like some people would say it does. It makes us better people.
People don't even do movies really much about pranks anymore. Now it's pretty much just getting revenge on the college bully. But now, I mean, I think everyone's just tired of that. Now they just want either something very blunt like Tarantino, or they want something more subdued, kind of like some of these other beloved indie guys. And it's a tough line.
It feels like people have sort of lost their ability to just kind of go and enjoy themselves. There's just like, it used to be like, that's really all you, now thinking a little bit is actually very good too. Like it's good to think about, but sometimes things aren't really meant for anything deeper than, and that's something that like the Hughes movies are really, and that's why, my daughter's 15 and we've watched.
Yeah. They're not dumb. They have dumb characters.
They're not dumb, but they're not anything like, there's no hidden meaning behind anything either. It is just
it was
pure.
Just what it was.
Yeah.
There was nothing like, I watched 16 Candles and there was a lot of stuff happening in that movie where I'm like, holy shit, do they realize what they're doing? And it's like, no.
Right.
It's just what it is. It wasn't meant to be deep. Like, and it was the 80s. Like, now a lot of stuff in that movie, no. Like, no, you don't do that now.
Right. Oh, and there was these movies you want to take a look at the characters. He's doing movies about teenagers, and I've been around enough teenagers to know, even if you just want to look at the characters, like forget about the motivations of the director or the writer or the whoever. If you just want to look at the characters, and I love them, so I say this in complete love. Teenagers do and say some stupid stuff. So,
that's exactly it.
They wouldn't be teenagers without it. Yeah.
How are you going to make a movie about teenagers without making them do stupid, problematic shit? Right. They do stupid, problematic shit sometimes.
Right. They need to be flawed, because eventually someday, maybe not in this movie, but eventually someday, they are going to grow up to be hopefully less flawed people, but they're not there yet.
Even the actors,
whether it's a teenager in a movie or a teenager in real life. Yeah,
totally. I don't think even some of the actors ever came as close to replicating some of their, best known roles from these movies. Judd Nelson found out the hard way. Maybe I should stop being like my Breakfast Club character and creeping everyone out. Matthew Broderick, he'll always be Ferris. There's just nothing close. And
I mean, he's
Molly Ringwald pretty much retired and became a mom. So,
I'm thinking like, for me, Breakfast Club is probably his like masterpiece in that genre that he does. I
totally.
think. And the one thing that's kind of cool, and you mentioned the janitor and stuff. The one thing that's really cool about that is that the adults aren't just kind of like the bad guys.
Right.
Mhm.
There's actually these moments, where they're sitting around and they're like, oh my God, these kids.
Those
You
scenes
know,
were
and they're
important for me. Those scenes were really
Yeah.
important.
like they're having like he's a dick. I mean, he's a dick, but then
he's traumatized though. He's a traumatized dick. That's
Yeah.
why.
That's
you
why
know,
he's
but and like the
insecure
principal,
and
like
stuck up.
Yeah, the principal's a jerk and everything, but you find out why he's just exhausted from the whole thing about being an adult, and being having to deal with this kind of it's just I don't know if there's ever going to be anything like that before. And I think they've tried.
They even want to remake it, and people are like, "You better not. You better."
I started writing a sequel to Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where he.
Yeah,
I did. Yeah, I got.
Well, you
I don't
guys
know how
are
many.
a
loyal
sequel
fans,
to
so I
that is
trust you.
fine, but to remake those
Don't
movies,
remake
I'm like,
them, please.
please don't.
Aren't they doing? Did I just hear the other day they're doing a TV series that's kind of it's supposed to be a Ferris Bueller spinoff run by the same people that are doing Cobra Kai?
I don't know.
They already tried to do
Cobra
a Ferris
Kai.
Bueller.
Yeah, they did.
Cobra Kai is better than it has a right to
first
be.
role.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought I heard that the other day that it might be the same team that's doing Cobra Kai that are looking to do a kind of a Ferris Bueller
possible,
spinoff. But yeah,
Wow.
and that's
kind
one
of
of
the
the
new
things
thing.
about
Reboot something beloved.
yeah. One of the things about these movies too is it just as because you kind of posed one of the questions early on about like, is this in your top 20 or something like that? And I look at this and I go, all right, well, if I think about all of the directors and the percentage of their movies I've seen and the percentage of their movies that I love and the amount that I quote this just as part of my everyday vocabulary, John Hughes has got to be up there. Like I don't know what number I'd give him, but I mean, I am constantly finding
he would be on your must-see filmmakers list.
Absolutely.
Which is matters more than most, because there's plenty who we watch and it's like, yeah, but they're a two-hit wonder.
Right. Well, and lines, lines from his movies that just make it into like everyday vocabulary. I feel like this. I feel like I should have gotten more of a reaction out of this living where I live. But when I first started teaching, it was my first year teaching was in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And so my first class, I was teaching 8th graders. So these kids are like 14-ish years old. And I go in first day of school. And of course I got to take the attendance for my classes that are there.
Oh, dear.
I start going down the list. I'm like, okay, Ackerman. Okay. Adams. Okay. Bueller. Bueller. And I had maybe 4 or 5 kids laughed because their parents had shown them the movie. And I was like, perfect. Got him. So every year I made it a habit.
Gotcha.
When I got a new batch of kids, I would do that every single year, and fewer kids would laugh. Years went on until finally, I think it was like maybe 2010, 2011. One kid just goes, Mr. Reed, I don't think we have a Bueller in our class.
Wow.
I always
like, thank you, Mr. Obvious.
My name for Starbucks or for like logging into hotels and stuff is Buck Melanoma. It always is.
Oh, yeah.
It's always Buck Melanoma. It's funny because if you look at from that window from like 84 to like 87, 88 or something, that's when like the bulk of this stuff was. And if you look at them, you can almost watch them if you watch them in release order, it's almost like it's a chronological, because it starts with like 16 candles and it ends with like she's having a baby in planes, trains, and automobiles.
That's another one who does get overlooked. I think I did see something with
one of my favorites
Kevin Bacon and was it Elizabeth Perkins?
McGovern.
Elizabeth McGovern.
Yeah, she was in that, and then Alec Baldwin's one of the friends in one scene.
And it's almost like watching somebody grow up as through these movies. I mean,
they're so youthful, and that's why they were cast. But they were even leagues ahead of it more than they realized. They didn't know if it was going to be a hit or not. But I mean,
But can I also say they also have amazing soundtracks?
Yeah,
amazing.
And it's so uncommon because like for an old school guy, he was using just very modern music. Some of it was like commissioned for it, some of it was just what was on the radio at the time, and he wasn't worried about copyright issues or anything. It's like, yes, is this movie?
I learned about the Smiths from John Hughes movies. I learned about OMD from
Psychedelic Furs, all that.
Psychedelic Fur, like
and it all has a purpose. He's not doing it just for montages, like.
Yeah, my daughter's 15 and she loves Pretty in Pink, and she hasn't quite the song Pretty in Pink. and she hasn't quite realized that it's about a bunch of people at a girl's funeral yet. She hasn't realized that part.
Right.
But it's the most joyful like song about a dead girl that I've ever, really,
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's a lot to take in.
it is, yeah, man. But it was a curse growing up in that era because I was Ducky in high school. Like I just was. So to people who liked me, I was Ducky. To people who didn't like me, they called me Chunk, and I hate it. Which wasn't John Hughes for me, but still, But yeah, that
was even more cool.
Yep. And the girl I had a crush on was like a redheaded girl, and I'm married to a redheaded girl. It just stays with you. Molly Ringwald just kind of affects you,
Yeah.
But yeah, they're so influential, and I don't know if there's anything for kids now for people of that age. I don't think there's a similar kind of director or movie experience that's out there now that is the same. No. I just don't think that. I think it's not dead, but I just think it's a missing genre. Like they don't make them anymore.
Movie that comes out every other year that's about high school. I think I even saw 8th Grade by one of Olivia Wilde's directed movies, and I was just kind of very uninvolved with it. I'm like, I just don't feel like anyone's really connecting each other.
No, I don't feel it either. Mm-hmm. I remember when the song Missing from Everything But the Girl came out, and people were like, oh, who's this new band? I'm like, I already heard their song, and she's having a baby, Apron Strings, because I thought that was Sade, and I was wrong. It was a band called Everything.
But it's easy to mix up a lot of those synth waves, disco type music.
So I felt cool for a second. I was like, I already know who they are. Like I'm cool. I'm with it. I know who these bands are.
I think
John Hughes movies.
I think Booksmart was like the last time I saw something that felt like that. I mean, it was kind of just like Superbad with girls, but not. I mean, I think it had a little more heart than Superbad did, maybe. But Booksmart was the last time I saw a movie that felt kind
there
of.
There was like that other one with Haley Steinfeld that was kind of trying to be like that, and I guess you could say maybe a bit of that in Lady Bird, but it's like.
Oh yeah.
It just Lady Bird. Easy A, I definitely get a big Hughes reference from because the character.
Easy A, I really got that too. I feel like a lot. And that's what I'm saying. Even though he's gone, I feel still like he's inspiring everything.
Oh, I'm sure he did. Yeah, like all these people going into
even if they weren't trying to reference, it's referenced.
Right, you can't escape it. I feel like, and that was my thing growing up with John Hughes was just like. I didn't really, like I said, I lived in an area that was really suburban, and we didn't have, my mom was raising me by myself, so she was single and she was Puerto Rican and she was never taught how to drive a car. So we lived in the suburbs and didn't own a car the whole time.
Oh man!
So we'd have to walk everywhere, and
you were used to the walking around, having time to yourself, having to think.
And so I'd walk to the movie theater and I'd go to the movies and see these movies, and it'd be like. Relatable, and I wasn't even that age yet. Like I was still like 11, like 84 I was like 8, 9, and then like when like She's Having Baby came out I was like 12 going on 13, and it was already relatable even though I hadn't experienced.
And family would often let you watch these kinds of movies because they're not
because
it's not something that's like over the top to where you're just like, whoa, I think you're gonna do something bad and imitate everything. Like it had a way of just kind of, even when it wasn't breaking the fourth wall, like in his later work, I mean, I mean, they're dealing with all the kinds of topics, and it's even so wild because
weird science is so kind of inappropriate, but like your parents didn't care because it was fucking funny.
There was that, and they didn't think you were going to be like the idiots.
No.
It's
also
and
like
the idiots know they're idiots.
Going back to Anthony Michael Hall, I mean, I was not surprised, even though it was a shitty season. I was not surprised that he, Joan Cusack, and Robert Downey Jr. got cast in SNL, even though when they were on, I was like, because I've seen their improv in those movies. They're genius.
Yeah,
I was like, they're really good.
Yeah.
So it's just like going back to that, John Hughes really had an eye. Like he knew what he had on his hands, and he tried to showcase it as much as possible.
And half those actors were exactly who they were in the movies. They were high school dropouts, trying to figure out what to do with their life. I'm like,
I think Elon Mitchell Smith wasn't, though. I think he was genuinely like 14 or 15.
Yeah.
I remember Kelly LeBrock had to smack him. She discussed it. She said she had to smack him because he did something really inappropriate in that scene where he had Chip and kiss him. And she had to respect, but she said he learned right away, and he was respectful right away because he was a baby. He was like 14, 15. He actually really was going through that shit, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes kids evolve really fast.
Yeah.
I mean, very fast.
Well, because then on the other end of the spectrum during this, you had the Corys and everything, and it seems, you know, that route.
The Brat Packs were starting out in everywhere. If you weren't in the Outsiders or Lost Boys, then you're in this.
It's funny. I mean, I know a lot of the Brat Pack that came out did have some dabbling in drugs and stuff, but I also feel like they had more of a maintaining. They were capable of maintaining.
I'm just glad they had giant mega TV heads 20 years later. You know?
Yeah.
Spader is excellent on Boston Legal.
Spader's amazing, man.
Spader plays everything, but I mean,
Spader plays that one guy so
correct. But I mean, even
Ultron was that guy. You know,
even Michael Hall when he had the Dead Zone.
I went for that recently. It's one of a hell of masterpiece. We did it for our Halloween.
He did his. For me anyway, I mean, I might have missed a bunch of stuff, but for me, like Edward Scissorhands was kind of the first time he popped up in something. I was like, oh my God, that's I don't know if he had taken a long time off.
So-and-so,
yeah. And he was so cool because he was playing against character because, you know, he was always either like the nerdy guy. And then like he did, was it Johnny Be Good or something? Yeah, he did.
Johnny Be Good. I remember.
With Robert Downey. And that's so wild. I'm watching that. I'm like, it's not as clever, but it makes sense that they're in this together because it's a weird science reunion.
Yeah.
And then he kind of fell off but like Hughes in the 90s is where I sort of fall off of my fan because he starts writing. Like there was a point even now where I'm still finding things that he wrote. Like I didn't know he wrote Menace the Menace. I had no idea.
Taylor,
you know, Drill Bit Taylor's hilarious, but I didn't.
It's fun for what it is. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
like,
I had no idea
because it's so.
You mentioned Dutch earlier, and I forgot about Dutch.
Dutch is great too.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
That's around the same. That what was that like 90, like early 90s.
Even if you're disappointed,
Ethan Embry was in it. So yeah, he was. I know Ethan Embry was in it, and he was about 12.
Yeah,
about my age, so that's what. So yeah, it had to be the 90s.
Even if you're disappointed by one of his works, you're gonna remember it.
Yeah. Like even like we mentioned,
Career Opportunities. I was disappointed by, but it totally made sense. Why he came up with this.
I love Career Opportunities.
Career Opportunities had Dana Carvey in it. Am I wrong?
No, Career Opportunities.
You're thinking of Opportunity Knocks, I think.
Career Opportunities was like Frank Whaley. Who's Frank Whaley's like 50 and he looks like he's 32. And Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah, Jennifer Connelly. I remember it now. I totally saw it. Frank Whaley, for the record, when I was working at NYU, I'd always see him walking down.
Oh, really? He was before his collaborations with Nofrio and Ethan Hawke and.
When that came out, I lived in this town called Milford, Pennsylvania when that movie came out. And we had like one movie theater that had it had 2 screens and a drive-in, and they had Career Opportunities there. And we would go and see Career Opportunities like every single night.
Wow.
Like, because we knew a guy that worked there and he used to just let us in. I saw that movie so many times.
Before it was a thing.
That one in Pet Sematary, we saw more times than any human beings need to see these movies. But that movie was like that 1-2 punch of Labyrinth and Career Opportunities was like Jennifer Connelly. And like, you know, I was 17, 18 when that came out. That was like changing my life, you know, dated too many girls with really long, beautiful black hair. And, you know, it ruined me. But yeah, that guy, man. Now I want to watch all of these. Like I just want to pop them in and watch them all. And they should. Did they release a box set? Did they do a DVD box set?
I can't imagine how they couldn't have by now, you know, because every other director gets like the signature series, you know, for the first time in Dolby.
We'll return after these messages.
Do you ever find yourself thinking about who would win in a fight between Goku and Superman? Hi, I'm James Gavsey, and on the Who Would Win show, me and my co-host Ray ignore anything important happening in the outside world and debate fictional battles between characters from comics, movies, and video games.
We got a new show every week, and almost always am I the winner.
Yeah, not true, Ray.
In the past, we've discussed such matches as Captain America versus Darth Vader, Solid Snake versus the Iron Giant, classic matchups like RoboCop versus Terminator, and even the Muppets versus Sesame Street.
That one was crazy. So if you're a fan of geek culture and love a spirited debate, check out the Who Would Win Show wherever you get your podcasts, or check us out at whowouldwinshow.com.
We let things pile up in the DVR, we add them to our queues, we wait for the DVDs and Blu-rays. We time shift. The Time Shifters Podcast. Sci-fi, horror, fantasy, superheroes, comedy, action, film, television, maybe some not-so-current events. Find us on iTunes or at timeshifterspodcast.com.
Cool thing about Blind Knowledge is we are in multiple countries. We are worldwide all across the globe. We are in the US, we are in the UK, we are in Canada, Germany, India, Japan. We're in Australia, y'all. BlindKnowledge.com. Now back to the feature presentation.
Dragon Ball Z, One Piece, Naruto, all things that we love, all manga that were originally published in the legendary magazine Weekly Shonen Jump.
But not every series can run for 300 chapters and have a hit anime. This is David.
This is Jordan.
We're the hosts of Shonen Flop. Each episode we look at manga that ran in Jump that didn't quite make it.
We discuss what it did wrong, what it did right, how the series could have turned itself around, and ultimately, was it a flop or not?
We're on all your favorite podcast apps, and you can find us at shonenflop.com.
Keep on flopping, floppers.
Yeah, it would be with updates of things, and people do, like we mentioned Cobra Kai and stuff. Cobra Kai, which is like, it's so good, and it also
works really
awful.
well.
Yeah, it's like both.
Yeah.
It's both, but like that's the way to sort of update something, and I would be neat to see some of these characters and where they are, like the idea of
their moment in the sun.
Yeah,
like people are finally showing their colors after years of not getting any work, and it's like, I guess I'll go back to playing the beloved character you've immortalized me as, but it's got to be on my time, under this roof, with this amount of...
I wouldn't be surprised if some producer somewhere is like, we got to get Ferris Bueller and
we got to get the Hughes estate
having his kid
in.
being a total pain in the ass. Like there's been meetings for that. I just can imagine.
I'm sure there has.
Or Ferris is working in his job in like downtown Chicago somewhere, and he just wants to take a day off, so he ditches work. And he's a little older, but he's still a righteous dude.
Yeah, he's a dude.
Like, I want to see Ferris Bueller
that no one asked for coming to Netflix.
Yeah, Ferris Bueller's like a 50-year-old divorcee with a kid, and Cameron has a self-help empire using all of the things that Ferris Bueller.
He's still letting people steal his dad's car or something.
Yeah, so Cameron kidnaps Ferris for a day, and they break their kid out of high school, and they go and they hang out. And
From the creators of Bill and Ted, Face the Music.
It would be right. And see, that one worked really well too.
Right, it was gentle. It was gentle.
Yeah.
It didn't overdo it. It didn't overstay well. Because you look at that in comparison to other comebacks that come out, where it's like you confused your audience, you added too many new characters, and you didn't have enough time. You imitated the shots we loved, but you still didn't build the world or enhance it. You just So
I was very convinced that I had read something about there being a Ferris Bueller's Day Off sequel, like a TV series or something. It's not. I remembered it wrong. They are doing a movie, and it's called Sam and Victor's Day Off, and it's supposed to be what happened to the valet guys after they stole the car.
I did hear about that. Yeah,
that would be. Yeah, I'm down because
as soon as I
want to know more about those characters, it's not just.
Sometimes I'll get a little bit like, do you have to make a sequel of that? But then I heard how they were doing this one. I'm like, no, I'd see that. Like, I'll allow it for now. I'll go see.
You're like Shang on Community, and don't you love that they dedicated to John Hughes in the pilot episodes because everything was like practically just a huge tribute.
Yeah.
I'll allow it.
I write comics, or I try to write comics, and I try to draw, but they don't get very far.
You got to show us more comics, my dude.
But years and years ago, and this, I swear to you, I'm not making this up. Years and years ago, I had an idea for a comic called Shermer, and it was going to be about Shermer, Illinois, and it was going to be about the high school and all the John Hughes characters, and something goes haywire because and the kids from Weird Science have to stop the three Molly Ringwalds from meeting each other because it starts this whole dimensional thing. And I had the idea for the script.
Time warp.
Yeah, like in a friend, because there's three Molly Ringwalds. There's Andy and Steph, or no, whatever her name is. You know what I mean? But they looked him. This guy that I know who was in the business had IMDb Pro and looked up John Hughes's contact information, and we put together this proposal, and all this other stuff was going to be, we were going to try to send it cold on him, and he died. So, which really sucked. I'm sure it sucked more for his family and more for the, but that was like, man.
Did it come out of left field? I can't remember now.
It was definitely for a lot of us. I mean, no one.
Because I know I didn't
he was very
even know
private. He was very private, so no one knew if he had any health issues. No one knew about it except his estate. And
he had a heart attack.
It was a heart attack. He was visiting family in New York, and I think he was just like walking down the street, and he just had a massive heart attack, and he was gone.
Yeah, wow.
He was like 59 years old or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's yeah. And that's, but what's funny is you look at something like that and you're like, oh, holy crap, 59 is pretty young,
Yeah.
Like, when you can, knock off having said so much stuff to so many people, like we're sitting here, it's 2022 and we're still talking about these movies from like 84, or even before that. Like, what was this? I mean, I guess Vacation really would kind of be I think the first one he directed was 16 Candles, I want to say.
Yeah.
I mean, all of those things. If chances, I don't know if he's as popular as somebody like Spielberg or something like that. But if you were to walk up to somebody on the street and say, "Hey, name a John Hughes movie," they might. Chances are they probably can.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be Ferris or something like that, But they most likely can, like, to make an impact into, and they're still, and I watched Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum and Anthony Michael Hall was on an episode, and they talked about him extensively. People are still talking about this guy and positive influences and all those other things. It's a nice, and the movies are kind of a breath of, because there's no cynicism in them, really. Like even Plane, Trains, and Automobiles, like, Steve Martin's character is sort of a grumpy son of a, and
even he's not even the same guy that he is in The Lonely Guy. And John Candy's definitely not the same one that he is in The Great Outdoors or freaking Uncle Buck.
And by the end of it, there's always an understanding. There's always there's always a swell up of certain, and sometimes
every other actors, 80s teen movie would do that, where they're just bitching at each other and the movie just ends. And it's like, well, I didn't know what was going. It sounded like you were going for something totally different in the last 20 minutes, but he gets the teenage angst, and then he gets the accepting adulthood, accepting the fortunate job that you're unhappy with, just all stuff that everyone talks about but doesn't want to talk about. And he doesn't make it feel like if you and your friends were after work and one of them started to bitch about how much they hate their life, he doesn't do it even to where it's a rant. It's always just a, hey man, something's got to change. I'm calling you uncle. We don't get along, but uncle, I need your
There's always this realization. Like even Great Outdoors. There's always, by the end of the movie, there's an understanding.
Want this house? Do you want this?
Yeah. People like Uncle Buck is another one. Buck comes in and he is an absolute disaster of a human being. And he's, he's not. You get the hint that he's not like an alcoholic, or he might be, but he comes in and the kids are like, and the family and the neighbors, they're all just absolutely flabbergasted by this guy who, by the time the credits roll, everybody loves in the way they're supposed to love him. They're not comfortable with him necessarily, but they love him, and that's, there's something about his movies where they all sort of have that little, by the time the credits roll, everybody who is supposed to understand something understands it. And that's refreshing, especially now, because like I said, everything's cynical.
Yeah.
It's because it's easy to be cynical now.
That's the one that it's one of the last John Hughes movies I ended up watching was Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and just saw it, maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever it might have been, just probably about 10 years ago. And that's one of those where you go through the whole movie and it runs the gamut of, it's got some of the slapsticky humor. It's got some of the dumb humor. It's got, I love the whole scene because I feel like I've reenacted it. The whole scene at the rental car desk and all that. And then you get to the end of that movie, and I tell you what, there was a lot of dust in the room when I was watching it, because you get to the end of that movie, and I've got something in my eye. I don't know what it is, but it's like, something's going on here, and I'm like, God, how did this movie do that? Like, you made me laugh out loud. You made me kind of cringe. And then by the end of the movie, I'm kind of crying here because you've hit pretty much every emotion you could possibly hit. And while I think you mentioned earlier, like, he's not a Spielberg. He's not,
And he wasn't trying to be.
And he's not trying to be, but
he's not trying to be John Cassavetes or Michael Mann.
He's not a Spielberg, but I would challenge anybody to find another director who does emotion the way that he does, and to be able to hit all those emotions.
Yeah, because there's so many, they vary by movies, or they're too diverse. Now we're seeing an increase in where people want, like, now is like, as soon as they get big, they got to start doing a giant movie that's not at all what they started out as an indie. Like, what are Ryan Coogler and Zack Snyder going to do when they give up superhero movies? They're going to probably have to go back to what got them on the map in the first place. And
I would challenge anybody to find a director who did better characters than John.
I feel like that's the main
or
thing.
better, just a better high school setting, because like there's so many people who do coming of age stuff, but it just doesn't feel natural. It feels like they're just going off cliff notes that their daughter gave them, or that they think 80s kids were like. And I'm not saying everything's going to be accurate. Everyone's experience is different, but like you are all hitting very hard on is he understands how to have it all unfold naturally, as opposed to just that's the movie. And like, I can't even process this all. This is a mashup, or it's entertaining, but I don't think it's a good movie. It's never even that circumstance.
It was mentioned before how he'll have actors play so many different types of characters and everything.
He wants them to experiment.
I feel the only one that didn't really happen with was Molly Ringwald. I mean, they were different in a sense, but they were still angsty the same. And I think it's because he wanted Molly to be the character. I feel like he wanted the actress to be the character. So I feel like Molly is so each character that's why he didn't change it. Molly was the popular girl in the Breakfast Club who's tortured by being the popular girl.
I feel like, and didn't he write some of the parts specifically for her? I feel like I read the story.
She influenced so much of Pretty in Pink, though. Like, she even influenced the ending.
Right. Well, I feel like originally when he was looking through like headshots. I feel like I've read this story. He was looking through headshots. He spotted hers. He tacked it up on the wall, and then over a weekend wrote 16 Candles based on looking at her photograph.
Yeah.
And then, so if that's his, for lack of a better term, if that's his muse that he hadn't even met yet, that would make sense as to why he would base so many characters on.
I mean, I remember hearing recently how some people were, because people always have to go there, but some people thought that his relationship with Molly was it wasn't inappropriate, but it was like straddling that line. Like, he was a little too possessive of Molly as an actress as a muse. Because he didn't want to cast anyone else. He didn't see anyone else in those characters. And, that may be true, but at the same time, I can't imagine those films with anyone else.
No, right.
I can't imagine any of those.
Did he take notes from any of his casting guys, or was he often like duly noted? I'll know when I find the right kid, the right teacher, the right.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting because he used
private. Like, I saw Wikipedia, they said like one of his few commentaries is like the 99 DVD of Ferris Bueller. I'm sure that's the copy I got. I might have to dig it up one day when I'm bored at work.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I don't know. There's I think she was supposed to be in Some Kind of Wonderful too, but they realized it was a little bit too much. Like,
I think she was over it after she did that movie For Keeps. I don't know how involved, like, I just know that was like, it was like kind of like, it wasn't the most rated, critically acclaimed movie that she did. And then after that, she did some movie with Andrew McCarthy that it was a drama. I don't even remember the name of it, but it got panned so bad.
Something Horses, wasn't it, or something?
Yeah, it had. I think it had the name.
I saw that, and it was more noted for being like one of Ben Stiller's first roles and having more F-bombs than usually allowed in a PG-13. I see. What's funny is I think Matt Dillon's in it also.
He might be. I just feel like people wanted Molly to stay the teenage angsty.
People were more unfair back then.
Honey, she's older. It doesn't work anymore when you're over 21.
Right.
And there weren't, that's kind of the curse of being a child or a teen actor.
Well, and I think unfortunately, I think they did all get famous way too fast, and nothing could prep them for that. even Christy Swanson and Charlie Sheen are in brief moments of all his movies, and you know, who would have thought they'd become the bad boys of Hollywood?
Yeah.
I know. Well,
Fresh Horses. Oh my God, that's what it is.
Fresh Horses.
Fresh Horses.
Yeah.
As opposed to stale horses, I guess. But
Stale horses.
But that's the ending of Pretty in Pink is the only one that like I really hated, but it's still realistic though. So that's what, like, she wouldn't have ended up with Ducky. That's not how it worked.
As much as we would have wanted it to be that way, and as much as even John wanted it to be that way,
and that's when the movie ends. That's when it's you've said your piece. So what else would you possibly say to make it even better? It's
Fresh Horses is like, can it be that I don't remember much about it, but can it be like the continuation? Is that what happens with Andy and Blaine?
That's probably,
is that
let me see, did I even see it?
It's I saw it, but I don't remember much about it. It's a drama.
I gave it a 5 too. So I definitely don't remember it. That's right. I was watching it because I was trying to find Viggo Mortensen's part in it, and it's one of his first roles.
Oh, Viggo.
Oh, he's in there too.
Viggo, the best Satan ever of any movie.
Yes.
I love that movie too. Yeah. I don't know, man. And with the Ferris Bueller thing was so influential that there was, there's that TV show which everybody hates but I still love. And then there was Parker Lewis, which was a better Ferris Bueller TV show than the Ferris.
I agree with that. That's very true.
Everything had to be kind of a 16 Candles type pranks when they weren't going full blown Animal House, and then everything had to be a Pretty in Pink type. I mean, that's basically the plot of 13 going on 30 and every other chick flick. And then every other high school get out of trouble using wit is basically the
Saved by the Bell was such a rip off of like
yes,
like the breaking the camera, looking at camera, panning,
see
that
what
was
we did. Just more lowbrow.
Now I'm wondering if all of these things were sort of made possible by like Fast Times at Ridgemont High and things like that. And Square Pegs, if you remember Square Pegs.
Be more love triangles, more explicit talk. But it's a good question. Did it soften it, or did it increase the marketability? What did it do?
Because Fast Times was what, 82 or 83 or something like that. I can't remember. And then in like the Square Pegs TV show, that was a kind of a comedic, almost Hughesy feeling prior to that even happening. But man, it was a great. The 80s were so like I sound so much like my dad saying like we had it so much better, but we really genuinely did.
They did often let you do whatever you wanted back then, and it seems like a lot of the ones that didn't prosper were the ones who had no backup plan or just said no too many times, to where eventually the studio heads just said, fuck you, you're out of here. And it's like, just saying duly noted or acknowledging an assistant or a messenger will save you so much trouble of not getting kicked off your own movie. Right. And I did like that one bit where on one site where it mentioned how Hughes was forced to complete editing of, I think it was Ferris Bueller in LA. And so from that point on, he said, screw you, Universal, I think. And then, just started working for Paramount.
Yeah, I wonder if his career path in like the early 90s was like so weird. I wonder if it's because he said everything he had to say when it came to like teen dramas or relationship dramas,
tired
or they weren't making money
buying
anymore.
All this stuff. And I'm sure directing does take it out of you, because it is so much telling people what to do.
I always wonder, like, even other movies that had nothing to do with him, how much influence they had in the making of it. Even if they didn't, I feel like even if they didn't know him, it was in there. Like, one of my all-time favorite 80s movies, maybe even of all time, is Real Genius with Val Kilmer.
Oh yeah. That's totally got a Hughes vibe.
It's got the biggest Hughes. I thought back in the day it was a Hughes movie. It was
uncredited vibe. Or they saw one of his screenplays and said, hey, we don't want to pay him for it, so we'll make our own.
That's it. feels that way, and it's one of my all-time favorite movies. It still slaps. Like, it's still a great film to watch.
Oh, it's great. And or like and Savage Steve Holland with like Better Off Dead and One Crazy Summer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Those are
every
also
other John
very-
Cusack movie is pretty much.
Yeah. And Cusack was in like
Yeah,
Weird Science and-
that's another one. Yeah, you'd think
Even
you always get,
High Fidelity, had it been made in the 80s, would have totally been a Hughes.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you can't get away from some of the other stuff. Like I always feel like Heathers had,
Yeah, you're like New World Pictures, Christian Slater,
Right.
It was
how did
Heathers
this
was like if John Hughes went goth for a hot minute. Like that's what it felt like. It was like this dark film, but it was like with a John Hughes vibe.
right?
Yeah. We just watched Real Genius the other day, and that's a blast too.
Yeah, it's another great soundtrack film.
Yeah.
And where
I just,
people
you know-
remember the lines, it's
Yeah, it has
big deal.
the best. I quote those lines all the time from that movie. Like, Chet puts his name on his license plate. My mother does the same thing to my underwear. Your mother puts license plates in your underwear.
Yeah. How do you sit? Yeah.
It's an amazing film.
And he's very much and Ryan Reynolds kind of has that vibe, like the vibe of like Chevy Chase, like early 80s Chevy Chase flicks.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the new Fletch, but I understand that's supposed to be pretty good. But
yeah, I don't know what Chevy Chase would have done without those earlier vacation movies. Those were
Seriously.
literally-
Yeah, but that line delivery, that
those
sort of
shielded
like,
him before he became impossible.
yeah. Oh yeah, right. And Hughes had something to do with all of them, didn't he? Like he was the writer on
Just
Yeah,
about
he
all
was-
of them, and
he
he
was
got
the writer, yeah.
and he still got residuals just for creating the characters when they did direct to video made for TV sequels. So.
Mm.
I think the only one he didn't have anything to do with was European Vacation, because I remember reading
really?
somewhere. Yeah, I remember reading somewhere that he did Vacation, and then he was quoted as saying, "Yeah, until I saw a trailer for it, I didn't realize they were doing European Vacation," and I was like, "Oh,
I
there's
had
my
no
characters."
idea. Because guess
wow.
what? I like. Oh, this is bad. I like European Vacation more.
Oh, really?
I was the weirdo who loved European
Yeah.
Vacation.
Oh, that was
My
it was
father
so
hates those
stupid.
movies, but me and my sister have quoted them on occasion, and I understand
Yeah.
it. It is an acquired taste, and it all depends on when or not.
I think for me it was just the cast, like Dana Hill, who played Audrey, was
Mhm.
Yeah.
amazing as like ridiculously hysterical.
Yeah.
And
I
it was
think
just such-
Olivia Diabo was in it. One of them. I
Oh,
think.
Beverly D'Angelo.
That's what I'm thinking.
Oh, she's in all of them. Yeah, she's the mom in all of them.
She's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Well,
Well, he's-
several years ago they put in a roundabout that's not too far from where I live, and so
God.
just because I had to, I took the roundabout and I just started driving around the roundabout.
Big Bad
And-
Parliament.
Yeah, I was like, "Hey kid, look, Costco baseball field."
That's
Costco. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, he's listed as a co-writer for European Vacation, but I mean, who knows what that means? That means like they took the idea.
Yeah.
know,
Unused scenes that were omitted, earlier drafts. I mean, that's pretty much because you look at some of these other ones and they're often using a name that he was using earlier on when he was selling screenplays. So I'm like, yeah, so they've had him in the can for a while, and
Yeah.
that's why they were saying, "Oh,
Yeah.
the guy."
The original story, like the original, the story Vacation 58 is actually really funny. That the first movie's based off of.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He wrote, it was for National Lampoon. He wrote a little short story called Vacation 58, which is about Disneyland, I believe.
Oh,
Is
damn.
where they can't, obviously they couldn't use Disney, so they used Waterworld.
Yeah.
I can
all that
film
stuff.
that there, like Beverly Hills Cop 3, and then get told to leave.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And that's another one that they're bringing out again. Beverly Hills Cop is filming. I don't know if it's a
Yeah, they're
series or a
another
movie
one.
or what
Part
it is.
4. They tried to show years ago from the guys who worked on The Shield, and it didn't make
Yeah.
it past
There's-
pilot season. But
Yeah, he's
I'm hoping for
shooting
the
now.
best.
Like they're shooting it now, and
if
and
it's as
he's
good
actually
as Dolomite was for Netflix and Eddie Murphy, then I'm hoping this is good. But I'm
Dolomite
hoping
was great.
that's
think-
another movie doesn't get talked about. It's like,
Yeah. Well, I think Eddie Murphy's a good, and that's the thing with these '80s guys too. Is like they
people are
the act-
reserved because they've been disappointed by him post fame so
Yeah.
many times that when the good one finally does come out, it's like when there's a good performance by, say, De Niro or John Travolta, you forget because you've seen so many other movies and they're
Yeah.
in a dozen each year. You're like, well, are people just saying that just because, you know,
Yeah.
critics on the payroll, or is it legit really killing and it just happened to not make any money?
Yeah, they you know, sometimes actors, like I think it happened to Eddie Murphy. I think he stopped, you know, in the beginning they were challenging roles for him, and then he became Eddie Murphy, and he was just doing Eddie Murphy projects.
Yeah.
And it just didn't do, and then it loops back to, you know, he did Showgirls, and then he did, you know, Dolomite, and he got away from being Eddie Murphy.
I think you mean Dreamgirls.
Or Dream, did I say Showgirls?
I don't think he would be
Oops,
bad in decision making to
Dreamgirls.
be in
Dreamgirl. I mean, maybe you do Showgirls, you know. He was
He
desperate at
probably
the time.
does.
Was
That
that
might have been
before or
when he
after
met his
Pluto
next few
Nash?
trophy girlfriends. Yeah.
Pluto Nash.
Yeah. But like,
Oh
so,
my
like,
god.
yeah. I mean, but that's, you know, 80s things, you know, was,
And see, I think Pluto Nash might have actually worked better in the 90s. But then again, it might have ended up like Vampire in Brooklyn, where there's just too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, I feel like some people got saturated, like with their careers. Like people just they were doing so much that it was like, okay, they're not all going to be winners.
well, it's like Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage will do literally anything. Like you could anything.
I think
anything you give
Nicolas
him.
Cage is in on the joke, though.
Well, I think he is. I think Nicolas Cage is in
See,
a lot of debt.
well,
Is what
I
it is.
had a friend of a relative who tried working for his estate, and they said he has no concept of money. He just likes to keep making it because it's so fucking easy.
I just think he's just like, whatever, I don't give a shit. Which I actually kind of sort of respect him. Like he doesn't care. He's just like, I want to do this. Okay.
I mean, it's funny how I'm okay with some actors doing it and others I'm like, you just have wronged me so many times. Like you're here because the investor wants you here. Like The Rock, Idris Elba, and Kevin Hart are like, and Oscar Isaac are like the kings of like investors. Like we are in this because every audit movie we've been in has been a mega blockbuster.
Yeah, I feel like it like for Oscar Isaac, it bothers me only because he's done so many indie films that were really good, and they now because
his TV work is even
all those
superb.
got overshadowed. I'm like, but he did all this other stuff.
And then there's others where it's just like, okay, I might not like your movie, but you are definitely going to be a wonderful award-winning performance in it, like Jessica Chastain. And then there's other ones where it's like, I mean, you're good, but you were just so similar to so many other people at the time. Like, you're not the reason I'm seeing this movie. I'm seeing this movie because the talent involved has been great at scripting. So, I mean, Jamie Foxx, nothing against you. I think you're a decent actor. You've done so much shit post Oscar win that I'm just kind of like, and the Oscars spoil us because then we start expecting better script
Oh
writing.
yeah, there's so many Oscar nominees or winners that you think are going to go on and do so many amazing things, and there's some that just like it's almost like I reached the top, now I can lay back and be lazy. It's like, no.
And then there's ones that they always bring it, so then you're just like, well, I'm sure you did your homework. You focused on you. You're not going to be the one who I see on the 6 o'clock news as being kicked off the set for arguing with the producers all day or not coming
I mean,
out
that's
your
the
trailer.
thing too. It's like, I mean, as someone who tried to be an actress for years, and I still like to.
You could totally act.
Yeah. Oh, I did it. I did sketch comedy for years, and
Oh, nice.
Like my thing is, those accolades are nice, and they clearly are important. The thing is, I think for a lot of actors who aren't known, and you know those actors that get nominated for an Oscar and you barely heard of them. You're like, wait, who's that? I've never heard of him. Oh wow, he won.
Okay. He
like,
was
wow.
in a brief South Korean movie or a Brazilian film.
And then
or
what
a soap
happens
opera
is
I don't
that
watch.
there's like actors who've been around for a while that you've seen in indie films, and then they get nominated
Law
for
and
that
Order
one
episodes,
role.
and you're like,
Yeah.
And then there's some they're good at supporting, but they can't do it for the lead. And you're like, it's nothing against you. You got famous too quick, or maybe you should just go back to the actor studio a little overtime when no one's
What
there.
also happens, sadly, is because they've been struggling to get work for so long, and that Oscar
They get
helps
spoiled
them.
on it.
They get bombarded with screenplays, and they're like, yes, yeah. I'm finally gonna get.
That's what happened to Val Kilmer. I mean, you guys saw his piece, I take it, where he's like, he didn't know why he even wanted to do it in the first place. I'm like, so no wonder he was a prick by the time he was on Dr. Moreau. And
oh, that was such a trash fire movie.
Well, I mean, that documentary about the filming of that is like, I wanted to
then
mention.
You're with Marlon Brando, and isn't that so wild how the dwarf actor who was on there, he got a big head, and it got back to the New Line executive. He's like, we're going to include some snippet of that. That'll be our inside joke for Mini Me. We're working on this movie called Austin Powers. Let's put that in there.
Yeah, looping back to Hughes real quick. I just remembered but I mean, I just remembered the first line of what Vacation is based on. The article is something like, if Dad hadn't shot Walt Disney in the leg, it would have been the best vacation ever. That's like the first line of it.
Yeah,
and then it goes on to talk about like the station wagon, but in the station wagon,
he was a satirist. He was a humor columnist, and I think I think that's lost. When was the last time you actually pulled out a newspaper and you looked at the funnies?
Yeah,
it's just reprinting old stuff from the 40s.
Yeah, well, and satire, people don't know what satire is. People like they have these.
That's why Paul
memes
Verhoeven
are like
left and went back to the Netherlands.
Is that? Are you from the Netherlands or originally?
No, but I'm just aware of that whole thing because I went through all his Dutch movies that I've been meaning to see, but they're all out of print Criterion stuff, and it was worth it. I'm like, now he's making masterpieces that these last 2 years that have been well received. I'm like, and I keep hearing people say he should come back, he should do another RoboCop. I'm like, never gonna happen. Just like John Woo, when you've been wronged in another country and you've been told I can't be me.
Yeah,
fuck you.
People are,
and that's what Hughes would have probably done. I would not be surprised if he got in a fist fight with an executive and the executive said, "You're done," and he said, "No, I quit."
People have confused and the idea of all these prank satire is lost, and all these prank videos. Like, being an asshole to someone is not pranking someone. Like, you're not smacking somebody in the face with something is not that's.
I mean, they're doing a different type of prank where they're just kind of impersonating people or getting an honest reaction.
Yeah,
but it's a long way from how it used to be, where it used to be way more gross, like Punk or something else, where you practically are stalking celebs, and it's like, well, they're an asshole. Well, yeah, I would be too if you stalked me to my house every day.
Yeah.
In the parking lot where my kid is at the playground, and now I got to shelter them and make sure there's no crazy person who wants to kidnap them.
That's like that Bjork thing. Like, everyone was like so shocked that she went after this Thai news lady. It's like, she specifically said, do not meet her at the airport while she had her child. And then they met her at the airport, and then the woman's like, welcome to Thailand, and she just unleashed.
Lost her mind.
I don't know what you expected. And it's like,
and if you've already been told these celebrities are not nice, is like, don't be TMZ. I have no respect for any of that. I see some people trying to, joke it off. Oh, they're kind of funny. I'm like, that's just a shielding.
So what I hear you all saying is, don't mess with the bull or you get the horns.
That's right. 2 weeks. 2 weeks or 2 months.
Now, which end is John Hughes?
Yeah.
I think he's a little bit of both. I think he is the bull and the horns and the audience.
Do we need John Hughes? And I think that's what the world is missing, is John Hughes.
We need John Hughes.
Yeah.
Resurrect John Hughes.
We need that sort of filmmaking that's going to look at kids and as sort of like human beings.
It's what those new Spider-Man movies couldn't even replicate. I want to see John Hughes high school, modern day.
It's like, that's the thing too. It's like, we're in an age now with film where everything has to be about the film companies and like the production studios and like what they want, and it's never about what needs to be made. It's about, well, how much money are we gonna make?
Bingo was his name. Yes.
And that's not something John Hughes, I think, ever gave a shit about. Like, he was just like, I just want to make a movie.
He wanted a natural storytelling. He knew he couldn't do an art house movie. I don't think he wanted to do an art house movie.
He didn't want to do no special effects movie aside from like,
he didn't want to do that either. And let's be honest, most of the heavy lifting is by the effects guys
in the Midwest,
Yeah. He didn't want to boss his cinematographer around. He wanted to get just honest, sincere. And I mean, he was doing comedy. So I think at that point, he's like, I want to do my own form of comedy. And I mean, I for instance, I saw the recent Emmy-winning Abbott Elementary. Slow burn, but I'm really digging it. I don't know if it deserved best comedy that year. I mean, because there's so much competition like Ted Lasso, but I'm like, see, this is interesting because this, kind of like Blackish, this is choosing its own format. It's got some Office guys, but it's different, slightly different than Office or even Parks and Rec. And now I can't say they're stealing from Hughes or anything, where they're just they're doing what every comedy does. They're creating their own kind of wacky, their own kind of stupid, their own kind of smart, but surrounded by nincompoops. It's interesting how they're factoring it in here. And it says a lot because there's been too many mockumentaries where it's tough to keep up with them.
Ted Lasso feels very John Hughesy. That's
a good point, because
there's like a lot of
heart guys, and it does feel very human, and I didn't think of that, but yeah, I would definitely say, because it's comfort food. It's not just you keeping track of what's the next joke, because they do a similar way of, yeah, they'll make a movie reference and then they'll make just another everyday conversation. And when there's some sad moments like Hughes sometimes has, it does feel kind of needed to progress to the funny, like there's a natural human evolution.
There's a kindness to it. Like there is a kindness to it. I mean, you've got
no one's ever bitter. No one's name calling for the sake of shaming the other in their divorce or what have you. It's all a matter of, what do I do next? I'm losing my shit. I'm my most vulnerable that I've ever been. And that's what Hughes would do so well. He would always is like, okay, wow, this one day, in which happens to be the 2-hour movie, this character's going to lose their shit. And we're going to laugh. And then we're going to realize, oh, this isn't funny anymore. And then they can laugh again because now they've learned from their mistake, or they're going to try and shield their next oopsie.
I mean, that like She's Having a Baby, it was one of those movies where it was like, it wasn't the high school thing. It was being
any other movie would have slut shamed the female lead, or told us how bad the male lead is for impregnating that person, or just had them just fussing at each other the whole time. Right. That movie decided, well, I guess we're getting married.
And the thing was with that movie, it was the comedy of life. Of this is, I can't cook. I tried the barbecue.
It's a favorite on Oxygen. I still play it.
It's just like, and then it gets like, okay, the baby's head is caught, and you're like, what's going? Wait, this is happening in this movie, and then you play this woman's work from Kate Bush, and I'm like, oh
my god.
I was like,
well, it gives that sudden dose of pathos, and that sudden. It's like in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It's a slapstick comedy basically until you find out that
even puts like the best cinematographic moment in a movie is the tear falling from Kevin Bacon's eye. Yes. It becomes a droplet of blood from his wife, and I'm like, not this movie. I was like, this movie, really? That's genius.
It wasn't trying to be an everyday chick flick, and it wasn't trying to be a guy's movie. It wasn't trying to be anything difficult, and I applaud him for doing all these different kinds of movies, because even when he was tapped to do the kids movies from afar, they were different kinds of dorky kids movie.
Well, and the She's Having a Baby was probably one of his most autobiographical movies, because that
really
was supposed to be based on the troubles that he and his wife were having.
Oh wow.
Trying to have a child,
because it feels real. It doesn't feel, I didn't think of that, but everything Kevin feels like a conversation he had, and he decided to come. It's like he used his movies, I almost feel like, as his coming to Jesus moment, like as his talking booth. He's like, I haven't put this behind me, so I'm gonna address. It's kind of like how writers will talk about certain scenarios and they decided to counter it in their fiction that they're creating, and I almost feel like he's kind of doing that in a way. Is like, here's how I would have done it differently if I was a better person then, or had I known how to even just comprehend it back then.
And like, even the character was a writer, so that was like, I felt like it was biographical at some point.
And just because they're a writer doesn't mean they're happy, or they're not talking about writing the next sitcom. They're struggling to make everything work as humans.
And then he always made sure that the audience was in on it. Like, even like at the end of that movie, when it was comes to naming the baby, every single person he knew he was making this movie for a while.
You almost expect a jerk moment where I will name him Shithead.
It was just like when the cast of different movies of his were like coming up with names for the baby. From the cast of The Great Outdoors, the cast from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and all these people just naming names, and I'm like, wait, did he know? Like what is going? Did they know this was going to happen? It was just it came all together, and I thought that was really smart.
And it always comes together. It feels earned. I think so many people, they've seen so many high school knockoffs. I think that's why they shit on them now sometimes, or they just don't. I don't know. Sometimes some people just need the jokes explained. It's like, it's not you had to be there. It's not a you're soulless and you just don't get it. It's like, no, any of us can do better than that. They're still very cutting edge, because like every other movie pretty much would just then, good or bad, would kind of just go to the easy stuff, where we're gonna have 5 more scenes where they flirt or they get into a cafeteria fight, or They're suspended after class and they're talking shit with the principal who's also inappropriate or some shit. Now it's a matter of is like he comprehends life very well and he has characters pondering their life.
I also really love that his bullies were also like this, like he
explains how they got to be how they were. I mean, and even the flawed ones, you understand why they're flawed. When Cameron explains, why he hates his dad, it's a pivotal moment and it's a healing moment. And then, after 10 minutes, we're finally ready. It's a perfect fade out for when we're ready to actually go back to guffawing and wrapping up all the chaos that we witnessed. And because there's other movies where they'll just get away scot-free, and then there's other ones where I know people also kind of mock, but I kind of feel like our unofficial cousins, like Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. I think that is a hysterical movie, and it would have been better with Hughes probably, but I mean,
he also what was funny is he didn't come from quote unquote the wrong side of the tracks.
He didn't even come from a rich family. Yeah, he just came from
but he was able to see the white privilege and just the privileged kids being the actual bullies. And not the tough kid that wore the leather jacket and stuff.
The hunk who gets all the chicks but isn't all that bright in that.
Yeah, I mean it's you saw it in Weird Science. You saw it, but you also saw it in Some Kind of Wonderful, where
and I mean even the computer gal has a persona and she's supposed to be a robot, and you kind of get a bit of that even when you see a sci-fi program nowadays. They try to kind of take from 80s sci-fi comedies and just say, here's something that the character says that isn't supposed to be funny, but we're finding it funny because they're trying to understand how to be human, and humans are trying to understand just their whole world, that this fictional world that's been created. And I mean, creating a fictional world is not a piece of cake. In fact, half the time it sucks, really, because you're trying to think of something that hasn't been done or that you can commit to. Like, I love these characters. I don't have to rely on the actors to bring them to life. I can rely on my honest, and you feel like he has all the answers, even if the characters don't have the answers. Like, he could envision them, and then he could also probably be sincere. It's like, the story ends as soon as the movie ends anymore. And you'll damage the first rule of the screenplay, which is telling too much or overstaying your welcome.
You're still here? Go home.
That's the best thing.
Over. That's one of the first after credit scenes I ever saw. Was that, and Young Sherlock Holmes kind of has one too. We were thinking about you guys were mentioning she's having a baby, and I can't remember what movie it is, but Jake Briggs shows up on the street in some other movie. I think it's another Hughes movie.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Jefferson Briggs is standing on the street corner. I think it might be Home Alone or something. It might be one of them.
That wouldn't be surprising to me. I don't remember. Now I want to look back.
Yeah. I'm trying to look it up.
It's all part of the Shermer cinematic universe. So
that's right.
My friend asked me if Monster Squad was part of the John Hughes franchise. I was like, well,
it feels like it should be.
They shot the scene in front of the high school. There's a scene in front of the high school. So I don't know, but it wouldn't be I'm sure they shared the set.
Technical as I get with movies crossing over, I often just go to the Valverde universe.
Yeah.
If it's by Joel Silver and Fox or Paramount, it's probably
the best fan theory that I heard. Because fan theories are sometimes super fun and then sometimes they're horrible.
Agreed.
But the one with
sometimes they misinterpret a spoof as being part of the continuity. I'm like, no, that's not in the same elsewhere.
right. Or like the Ferris Bueller Fight Club thing, where the idea is that Ferris Bueller is a figment of Cameron's imagination and that he doesn't actually exist.
Like
it's not like one of those things where I could see it, but I think it's clever. Like I think it's my God,
Cloak and Dagger. He has that scene that's amazing in the car. He's like, he's gonna keep calling me.
Yep.
Like that. It's like you think there's something there not right. I could.
He would have never been on Spin City had he never gotten that role.
I know. That's right. My God. That was like one of the best scenes. Like Cameron, that was going to lead me to my question for you guys is what are your favorite characters that he's ever created? Because Cameron is up there for me. Cameron
I never feel like any character's unwelcome though. It would change by the day. some days I'd probably want to be. You could even want to be even the other characters, even if you're not of that gender. You know, it's like they're all in perfectly imperfect families. All
Who's
those
my
characters.
favorite John Hughes character? That's a really good question.
That's a great question. That is.
You know what? Okay, so I don't know if I have a favorite character, but I have favorite, like a weird. Okay, this is gonna sound weird. Everybody has like a favorite line from a movie, and I found that there are in my experience, having watched so many friggin' movies, there are 2 times where a line delivery in a film was the best line delivery that I have ever seen in a movie ever, and they're 2. And the first one is not John Hughes related. The first one is Ghostbusters. It's after they blast the maid's cart and she peeks around the side and she's like, "What the hell are you doing?" Best line delivery ever. And the second one is James Spader's character telling Andy that she's a bitch in Pretty in Pink. The way he says it, he's got the cigarette. He's like, "You're a bitch." Like, the delivery is so good, and you just want to reach in there and just be like, "Nah!" But it made me love. It made me love him. It made me love. Like, he's such a Jess. He's just such a horrible jerk.
And rich white stuff.
Yeah, now
guy that's just a major asshole.
They were both 30-year-olds playing 18-year-olds, but but it worked. Like, his delivery of that line is just like, I wait for it every time I watch it. I'm just like, oh,
there's
my
no
God.
bad performances in a John Hughes movie. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
I think that's true. I don't think there is.
I agree. I just feel like as I'm getting,
even if they went on to do bad movies, they were perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. But like, like Cameron was a character that like you couldn't escape like that image of someone, of just being that guy that he has everything. He comes from a rich family. He has money. He has, like, his father has these cars. You see his room. I don't know any teenager who had that bedroom that he was sleeping in.
Right.
And he's the most miserable fuck in the world. And he's not, I mean, he was in his 30s, granted, for real. But like, he was not, his character's like 16, 17 years old. And he's already a depressed, miserable 40-year-old asshole.
Neurotic.
Like, not an asshole, but just like, he really is just like, fuck everything. I'm like, oh my God, how can you? And it was perfect. The way he acted was even the stock exchange thing where he's doing this, like, just like he's being like, my mother and my father. I hate it. Like, how do you come up with like doing that? And it was great.
It's a mixture of everything. Perfect staging. You can't tell me that none of the rehearsals probably didn't.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's, I don't know. There's so many
even scenes where there's just very side characters are often funny because, like you say, I mean, the valet guys are funny. The people at the police station in Ferris
Please,
are funny
sir,
too.
I'm a professional.
You have nothing to worry about.
Well, like and the villain of that movie isn't Ed Rooney. The villain of that movie, you never even see him, and it's Cameron's dad. Is the actual villain of that movie. His presence is there
on Frasier, where they can show a key character, but only from afar. You just hear a voice.
The guy's presence is throughout that entire movie in this kid and his neuroticism and how afraid he is to just exist and everything.
And that's all due to his
we get that
portrayal of that character. Like, he makes it known. And that's what's so genius about him. And like I said, Watts was another favorite character of mine because I related to it. But I noticed now that I'm 47 and I really have been finding it hard because I am that person that, with Breakfast Club, if you notice, one of the things I think the principal had a hard time with the teenagers because, like so many adults, they don't want to relate to younger people. And I am that person that I believe you should have friends who are younger than you, older. You should have friends of all ages. And because of that, I feel like I now relate too much to Iona in Pretty in Pink, which is
she's so awesome.
Like, that's who I am because I still dress like, I still shop at Hot Topic, for fuck's sake. Like, I don't, I don't care. Like, I love,
she's awesome.
And my outfits change with my personality and everything like her. And so it's just amazing how that was so prevalent and just so seen,
So do you know the kid that she shoots the stapler with is the lead singer for the Aquabats?
Oh, I did not know that.
Christian Jacobs, yeah, he was like the creator of Yo Gabba Gabba, and he's the voice of the robot. This is my daughter's favorite kids show from when she was.
Oh wow, okay.
But yeah, he's the kid that almost gets shot in the eye with the staple.
That's funny.
But there you go. That's your little silly trivia thing for the show. But
there's so many musicians who appear in movie, and half the movies and half the time they're like the band that's performing in the background.
Yeah.
I love one of my favorites from any of these movies, just the performance and his line delivery and everything else. It's got to be Farmer Ted from 16 Candles. Especially growing up watching that movie over and over and over again, like that was my favorite character of the whole thing.
Don't hit anything. Yeah. That line is like,
he's like, where are we? You're in a parking lot across from my church. You own a church?
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So that one, I mean, as a kid and growing up, like that was always one of my favorite characters. Like that, as a kid, I connected with that one because he was goofy, he was a nerd, he was kind of the loser, and you kind of gravitate towards him a little bit. The one as an adult that I will say, just because I think that movie hit harder emotionally than I thought it was going to. I think my favorite character of John Hughes of any of his movies has got to be Del Griffith. Like, I mean that his John Candy's performance in that movie is just, by far, it's probably one of my favorites of all of his. I think he's one of the most well-written characters John Hughes has.
I think as an adult, mine would have, as a kid, it was Ducky. It was certainly Ducky. Like it really was.
I feel like that was a relatable person.
I didn't dress exactly like him because I couldn't afford it. His clothes was actually really expensive. They lied to me, but
and that's just it. They have it, but they're not happy with it. It doesn't feel like anything.
There is a girl on TikTok. There's a girl on TikTok. She represents a male, but she identifies as female, and she's Ducky on TikTok.
That's awesome.
And she wears these outfits, and I'm like, you spend a lot of money, honey. Those outfits.
Well, Bucket, I love Buck because my wife has a niece and a nephew, and they're like, what are they? I can't even remember, like 9 and 11 or 9 and 10 or something like that. It was super young. Anyway, and I'm kind of like their Uncle Buck. Like I'm the one that does like the silly, ridiculous stuff, and it's fun. I'm not as, I'm not like looking for a job, or whatever it is. They never really say what he's doing in that movie. But the sarcastic sort of stuff and the when my friend's daughter was experiencing some issues with a boy, I'm the one that showed up because her parents could get in trouble, and I could do whatever I wanted and head back to Pittsburgh, and they'll never find me. But no, I didn't do anything.
I know what
but
you mean,
I know what I mean. Talking about that.
And it's like it's I don't know, but it's another really super cool character, and his characters are lived in too, which is another thing. Like it's almost like he starts writing the story knowing what they did 2 days earlier before the story starts. Like,
I think that's what's so great about them, is that they're not just like, hey, this is a new character. It's like you're being introduced to these characters, but you feel like you've seen them and you've known them before.
Yeah. I don't know. It's good stuff, man.
1,000%. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
This was one hell of a fun time, I would say.
Yeah, man. This is great. I love this. I'm glad you bumped into me on chat rooms or something.
Yes.
It's
cool.
Do my best. I'm trying to work with all kinds of new faces because I just had so many just no shows for a while, and it's like, okay, this ain't cool. I legit want to have a fun, lively conversation.
Anytime.
I've been trying to do Twitch streams for a while, and I'd be like, the most I get right now is like 2 people. So, but I'm just starting out, so it's hard.
Very cool.
Yeah, this has been awesome.
You'll get there, and like you say, today is the year to just kind of talk about just some deeper stuff. I think everyone owes it to themselves, to just kind of have a cool sit down, and reflect about why you like certain things, and instead of just relying on just, well, we're just going to do the minuscule, talk about whatever.
Yeah. I'm gonna plug a book. If you guys are book readers, I'm gonna plug a
book
that fits really well with this, because we actually I caught the author a few years ago when we were doing a lot of these movies on our show, and the author's name is Kevin Smokler, and he has a book called Brat Pack America,
Okay.
He actually goes through and like looks at, he kind of examines that whole thing of like, it's basically, I think the subtitle is Love Letter to 80s Teen Movies. And he kind of examines, he breaks it up into the geographic locations. And he talks about in a couple of chapters, he does the California 80s teen movies. And then he does the Midwest 80s teen movies. And then he does the New York 80s teen movies. And like, he actually was up here in the town that I live in. They have kind of like an artist retreat. And the reason I found him was because he was doing a talk at the Northbrook Public Library. And he was going to go around to some of the different places where John Hughes had filmed. So there's a big section of his book that's all about John Hughes and the 80s teen movies and how it kind of all ties together and why Chicago was such an important location for all his movies. So if you guys are book readers, or if anybody listening is a book reader and wants to go check it out, it's called Brat Pack America. It's really
That's awesome.
Awesome.
America. Very nice.
Very cool.
Really, really good, but really quick read. I mean, it's, it's not a small book, but it's a quick read, and it was just real fun. You could tell he did his homework.
Awesome.
That is awesome.
I'm going to Amazon right now. So yeah, this was super fun. Anytime you guys want
yeah, same.
Pop in.
I put down a list of a lot of the stuff you guys were interested in discussing. So yeah, I'll get back with you as fast as I can.
Oh, it's got the cover super cool.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow, it's Bender and it's a VHS tape.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Okay, very nice.
He just did another. I feel like he worked with somebody to make some kind of a documentary. I want to say it was a short film or a documentary. It wasn't a book. I want to say it was called Vinyl Nation, and it was all about music and record, like kind of the resurgence of records and everything else. And I didn't get a chance to see that one yet, but I know that was the second thing he'd worked on after doing the Brat Pack America book.
Gotcha.
That's awesome. I just bought it. So very cool.
Awesome.
Yay.
Okay, well.
Cool. Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
I will check that out.
All right. Here we go. Yay, Brat Pack America. That's very cool. All right, folks. I probably have to go up and make my kid dinner.
Okay, dokie. Thank you all so much. Anything else anyone wants to plug before we take off here? I'll keep you updated when it finally airs.
I have my Twitch stream that I'm going to be, I haven't been doing every week, but next week I will be doing one on Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. So
nice.
Feel free to check that out. I'll give you a link for you to share it. It's just at Natalia Maria 1975 on Twitch.
Okay.
Very
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, and our podcast is the 30-something movie podcast. We're at 30podcast.com, and we are kind of the premise of our show is we're hitting movies that are reaching their 30th anniversary. So all of our movies this year are from 92. So
oh wow,
awesome.
So depending on when this one gets released, I know coming up soon we've got we're doing Bram Stoker's Dracula, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Army of Darkness,
the year of wacky cult movies.
My favorite one, and I love this movie, and nobody's ever going to tell me differently, but I've got a couple of people that are ready to debate me on this, is we're wrapping up October with Alien 3.
I love Alien 3. Alien 3 is great.
It's pretty good.
Thank you.
The
There's
funeral
an assembly
scene
cut, for God's sake. So people should. I do this with Johnny Mnemonic. I've had to tell people, if you watch the uncut version, it's a whole different movie. Totally restored.
The funeral scene intercut with the birth of the child. Oh, it's gorgeous.
But yeah,
that's
just
a gorgeous
like with
movie.
Alien 3, people should, if they know it's just like the Heaven's Gate argument. If you or Snyder cut, if you know there is a different cut of a movie, you should still watch a different version of it instead of saying, "No, screw it. I saw it all."
Cut.
It's not like unrated cut.
Yeah.
Where all they did was just put language, gore, and sex back in. It's like, well,
and Alien Resurrection is really, really good too. I don't know why people hate that.
That was great.
I like
too.
the characters. I just didn't like the pacing and CGI. But I mean, I would watch it over at where the franchise eventually went. So I mean, a lot of people also just don't. When they say something's bad, they don't measure the so-called badness. Same thing as the goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
Alien 3 didn't have to be like Alien 1 or Alien 2.
No.
It just had to be a different gritty tale. I found it to be a decent creature feature when I saw it.
Yeah. Well, I think the argument that because some of these guys that I know from another podcast, one of their arguments was they're like, well, you killed off Hicks and Newt at the beginning of the movie, and I was so angry that you invested all that. I'm like, but
that's the whole point.
That's the point. That's the hopelessness
Did you
of
even
Alien.
see the movie?
That's why Ripley is,
because that's the other thing too. They'll and it's bad now. They're still doing it where if there's a Waterworld type predicament where people are CGIing someone's face off or people are walking off,
I love
that'll kill the movie before it's out there. I mean, we've kind of seen that in the equivalent of, you know, Will Smith's on hiatus because he acted inappropriate on an award show, or Alec Baldwin, you know, being given a prop by a crappy, you know, prop setup guy, and he's already infamous as it is. So it's like everybody kind of has to realize there's so much more to this than, and I even have to tell my pals when they bash a director, I'm like, well, did he get final cut? What do you mean?
Yeah.
I like what a record producer is like. That's exactly what they are. They are the creative. That doesn't mean that they shot every frame.
I like Jean-Pierre Jeunet a whole lot, so that's why Resurrection. I like his style, like, you know, Delicatessen and City of Lost Children and Micmacs and all that stuff. I love it.
I need to see Delicatessen. Yeah.
Anyway, and I love Waterworld too, and I just bought the comics that Waterworld.
Yeah, there you go. That they were joking about that on many podcasts where it's like the extended fan edit is the best version of the movie. Take the TV edits, remaster them, take the existing movie, and add the best possible way that, unfortunately, not even a overpaid star and director who quit could, or a studio could accomplish. You know,
like
sometimes
the
people
70s
get too invested.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. The 70s King Kong. Like, I just got the Shout Factory Blu-ray on it that has all the TVs. Oh yeah, there's like all the added stuff for TV that they, because, you know, for television they took out certain things and added scenes that were cut. This is like the whole big shebang.
Hello.
And they did that with Superman too. And sometimes they go long, but I'd rather see more of something than less of something, I think.
Instead of just the trailer, and it's like, it's Blu-ray. I demand more. They're doing that. Did you guys ever see the wacky movie from '92? And they honored the star who just passed away, No Escape.
Oh yeah.
It was a Running Man Fortress type adventure with Lance Henriksen, Ernie Hudson, Ray Liotta, and they have a new interview with Martin Campbell, who of course is now a big thing. You know, James Bond.
Yeah, really good ones too. Yeah, the I don't know, man. There's what was it that something came out and it was like 3 hours long in the theater. So it might have even been, it was something, but I've never seen people complain about movie lengths either. That seems to be a new thing now. Like they're like,
so too. I mean,
like better take better pee before you sit down to watch it. Since when is a 3 hour movie that long? You can't hold your pee for 3 hours.
With Wyatt Earp. I had a problem with more just the underdeveloped story, but I see so many people, the first thing to do is 3 hours of nothing. I'm like, well, maybe if you weren't going to like it, I mean,
I feel like it was the Batman. Was that the one that was like,
oh, it might have been. It might have been
3 hours. And then I remember looking it up too. I was like, I'm probably not going to go to the bathroom in the middle of this movie, but let me just look and see. And it said, yep, there's no good times. It's you. Once you're in, you're in. And
it flows.
I don't drink too much.
I saw that movie twice in the theater because I went to go see it once, and then just to make sure it was okay for my son to go see, and then I took him to go see it. And both times I was like, this doesn't feel like a 3 hour.
Doesn't feel like it. Even Zack Snyder's, even the Snyder cut of Justice League didn't feel like it took, like, that's a masterpiece that
if you enjoy what you're watching though too, you shouldn't hold that against the movie. You see plenty of people complain about 3 hour movies and then they'll make an exception to something like Lord of the Rings. I saw LA Confidential and even Lincoln in the theater, and
Lincoln was great.
And I love them both, but I like when it was all over.
JFK also a really long movie?
Yeah, it's 4 hours, especially on TV. But yeah,
it's so good.
I didn't even realize it was 4 hours. I was so invested in it, and
that's my thing. It's like it's not new that movies will take so long. I mean, Amadeus had an intermission.
It's like you have to distract them enough to make them not bitch, but then at the same time, some people will only just look at the runtime before even watching it.
We're just at that point in society now where if there's anything to complain about, we're so bored in our lives that we have to complain about it.
I see other people who say they won't get into TV shows. It's too much time. I'm like, well,
I mean, that's how
you're a big TV guy.
I was YouTubing for a while, and it's not that I stopped. It's just I cannot bother to like try to edit it down because I know
there's a lot of time you don't have.
Like, they're like, oh, we won't watch it if it's this long, and I'm like, okay.
I had a year of being on someone else's podcast before we even started this. I already knew what I liked, what I didn't like, and
Yep.
I just decided, okay, I know where I'm going to go from here. And I realized that this is going to take a lot of time. And if I'm the guy doing it all, then I got to give myself proper amount of time. And so
I am being summoned, unfortunately.
Okay.
So, but again,
great meeting you all, and your merchandise and your nostalgia, and
I pop in on the podcast from time to time. People seem to like hearing me talk about shit, which is really nice. Like the grumpy old dudes every Sunday.
Yeah,
get on there.
I saw that promo.
Yeah, we yammer on and on about nothing in particular, and everything.
And Natalia, you've been on podcasts.
Yeah. So.
Oh, I had my podcast too and everything. So I haven't done that in a while, but that's what Twitch is going to be for me for the most part of my podcast.
Okay. But this has been an absolute pleasure, and I'm really glad that you asked me on. And you guys are awesome. So I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go. What am I gonna watch though? I think I'm watching. She's having. Well, that's kind of a bummer. Oh, well, she's having a baby. Okay, but anyway, thanks guys. I gotta go find someone.
Godspeed to you all.
Have a good one.
We'll meet again soon.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up